Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Bill Shawls, and this is another edition of Bullets Academy, the history lesson. And today we're going to go just a little bit back in history to 2019. Yep, only a year ago. Seems like a lifetime ago with all the COVID-19 stuff we're dealing with, but it's the men's 100-meter butterfly race, Caeleb Dressel, and where he breaks Michael Phelps's world record from 2009. The reason we need to go back a little bit is I want to go back and talk about the 2009 world record that Michael Phelps set first. The interesting thing about that race is that this was in what we called the tech suit era, the textile suit era. And in that time, there was this kind of wild, wild west with tech suits. And there was a company called Jacob that had actually made a full latex suit, and it was so slick that the drag coefficient was so low that people were crushing world records. And swimmers were actually wearing a blue 70 wetsuit and then putting the Jacob suit over it so they get a little bit of buoyancy, which helps their swimming. And then they also get the slickness of the suit. They were wearing the Speedo fast suits underneath to get compression, all sorts of different combinations that people were doing. And going into the World Championships in Rome, people knew that these suits were FINA was going to ban these suits going into the next Olympics because there was like 100 world records broken that year. And so, but FINA kept them in place for the World Championships because a lot of world records increases viewerships and those kinds of things. So that's a theory anyway. So in this era though, these suits were so good. It was the equivalent, if you didn't have one of those suits, it'd almost be like wearing your regular practice suit versus a tech suit. And we all know the difference in that. Well, Michael Phelps was like, I'm not gonna wear these suits. I'm going to wear the Speedo tech suit that did have some panels on it that would reduce the drag coefficient and did have a zipper. But the Jacob suit was just a different thing. But and now nobody, you don't even really hear about Jacob anymore. And quite frankly, I don't even know if they still exist as a company. But these Jacob suits, I mean, they were full latex, slick, and they were fast suits. There's no doubt about it. Well, Phelps was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to wear these suits. So in the 2009 World Championships, Phelps was the only one not wearing these suits. Everybody else was. And it's kind of like, how good do you have to be to race in that suit? Well, it'd be like Tiger Woods playing golf with a real cheap set of golf clubs, junior clubs, while everybody else is out in these high-tech clubs. So it was a dramatic difference. And there was a swimmer, Michael Caeleb, who was an unbelievable, he was great for 80 meters. And I should probably give him a little bit more credit because he also won under 50 seconds in that race where Phelps beat him. But the interesting thing, too, is that the races were so incredibly different, where Caeleb Dressel got out fast. He got a great start. We'll show that a little bit and talk a little about that later. But where Phelps, Cabbage was the one that took off. Cabbage was out in 22.6 and out in a half a second faster than Phelps, and Phelps had to reel him in and touch him out in the second half. So totally different race where Caeleb Dressel dominated the race from start to finish. And so, in fact, Phelps was so emphatic and he was so emotional after the race that he took his suit like this and showed the Speedo and basically told the world, I can beat anybody in any suit, it doesn't matter. And so it was just an interesting thing. And now that a lot of the suits in that Rome World Championships, a lot of those records, there's a lot of criticism. In Australia, there were a lot of the legends of Australian swimming, Ian Thorpe and Grant Hackett, their records were getting beaten. And in the Sydney newspaper, and coincidentally, I was in Australia at the time. Every day I get the Sydney newspaper, and the headlines are cheaters and all these other, the suit cheats and suit doping and all this other stuff. So, it was just interesting how Australians and they live the sport, but how they reacted to it too. So now there's what's interesting though is this is a record. Phelps set that record at those World Championships, and it didn't get broken for 10 years. Most of the other records that were from that era were the textile suits that, so it was kind of like almost people were like, should we put an asterisk or not? So this is a legit world record, and maybe one of the toughest world records that was out there at the time when Caeleb Dressel broke the record last year in 2019. So I'm going to break down the race a little bit and talk a little bit. I'm going to get into some of the techniques about Caeleb Dressel and what makes him so fast. Other than, if you were at our clinic or if at our banquet a year ago when Caeleb Dressel came and spoke, he's not super tall, he's not a giant. I mean, the guy's, he's a really strong guy, and he's in great shape. But I mean, you look at him and it's not like, well, gee, like he's not a freak of nature or anything like that. And so, there's some interesting, very important technique things that he does that I'd like to we'll break down as we go through it. So right off the bat is the start. And Caeleb Dressel has a phenomenal start. When you see right here on the video, you can see that he is out significantly farther than any other swimmer in the field. Now in this picture, it doesn't necessarily, you're like, well, okay, yeah, he's a little bit ahead. But being 6 or 7 inches ahead, just in the first 5 yards, before you're even in the water, is significant. And you can tell there's a difference from where he is versus where everybody else is in the field. Once he hits the water, we don't see the underwater dolphin kicks, but well, you see him a little bit in the video, but then it's the next breakout. He has phenomenal dolphin kicks. We're going to break those down a little bit later in the race, but he has phenomenal dolphin kicks. And when he breaks out at 5 seconds into the race, as you can see here, he is already in the first 5 seconds of the race. Because of his amazing start, because of his amazing dolphin kick work, he has already got nearly half a body length lead on the field. And so the race progresses. You see some phenomenal technique, and he gets the hips up. He's got a nice wide stroke and stuff like that. And but he just throws those hands out there, gets them out there, and that drive, that kick, is just driving that body. And because his kick is so good, and because he really reaches and throws out there, he's picking up a couple of inches every single stroke that most other swimmers in the field. And this is a world-class field. This is the world championships, the best swimmers in the world. And these guys, and he is just dominating them in literally every part of the race. And they get into the flags. And it's interesting to talk about Roddy Gaines because he talks a little bit about like his dolphin kicks underwater and his breakouts too. But when he comes out the wall, he's out in 22.8. Now he's out a half a second faster than Phelps's world record pace. But it's important to note that Michael Cabbage went out in 22.6. So look at where Caeleb Dressel is in this race at the 50, and he would actually have been in second place. So, I mean, just to give you an example of the differences of these races. At the 50, again, Caeleb Dressel's out in a 22.8. He's out in the second fastest 50 ever for 100 fly. But then he comes out that wall, and I want to show you a little bit about his underwater dolphin kicks. And I think it's great to see the videos and things like that. We're just doing stills. But right here, you'll notice that Caeleb Dressel, if you look at his knees almost like they're bending backwards. He's hyperextending his knees. So that gives him a little bit, again, if I can flex this much versus this much, I'm going to get a little bit more kick off of each kick. So, and also when you look at this video, not only has he got a little hyperextension in his knees, but his back, shoulders, and arms, that is a straight line. It's like I'm looking at a table, and it's so straight. So there's no extra resistance at all. He is just streamlined as can be. And most people, you get a lot of undulation of the body and things like that Caeleb Dressel just doesn't do. Then we'll take a look at the upbeat of the kick. He gets a full upbeat. And one of the most important things in dolphin kicking that a lot of people do incorrectly is they have a really fast downbeat and then they float the feet up, and a really fast downbeat float. Caeleb Dressel, you watch that video, he's got equal speed going up and down, equal pressure on the water going up and down. That's critically important to get the feet back up so you can get into the next powerful downbeat. But even on the upbeat, what a lot of people tend to do is they tend to lift their heads, tend to kind of snake their bodies around. But if you watch Caeleb Dressel, his head is in line, his back is still straight, even on the upbeat. And this is where you see a lot of swimmers, when they get to the upbeat, they tend to drop down and get out of line with their upper body. But I think what's interesting, this is a really important thing. It takes a lot of great back strength to do that. And because of those powerful dolphin kicks, Caeleb Dressel, another strong breakout. And he just, every phase of the race, he is extending his lead. And also, Now we get into the race. There's really not a lot to talk about. It's a 100 fly. I mean, it's a 49-second race. I mean, there's not a lot of like, well, this isn't a 200 fly where we got to talk about endurance and those kinds of things. Caeleb Dressel gets out fast, and he stays fast throughout the race. And at the end of the race, as he's getting close to the flags, I love this picture right here because you see the world record line, you can't see his arms. And the reason you can't see his arms is his arms are perfectly straight. And they're in parallel, so I don't know if I can even get back around. So he is out here like this. His arms are straight. He is throwing those arms all the way around and by throwing those hands wide, he's able to really launch those hands out in front. And when you're doing that, you're getting a couple more inches. And when swimmers get tired, they tend to start lifting the elbows. They get in tight here. They're not getting all the way out there and throwing those hands all the way around. And that's important in butterfly racing, is that you're pushing the hands all the way through, getting them out nice and wide, and then getting them all the way out in front. That's what gives you the length of the stroke. The longer your stroke is, the more times you have to actually haul those arms out of the water. It's going to make you a better swimmer. But again, it's that kick that's driving the whole thing. That's the driver of this stroke. Finally, he comes in under the flags, dominates the race start to finish, and then he finishes. We saw Michael Phelps. Fist pump, all sight. I mean, Phelps is, he's emotional. And back then, swimming didn't get as much cover as it's done now, and Phelps had a lot to do with that. But back then, you had to, being animated after your race is what got you on the front page of the New York Times and got you on the front page of the Washington Post. So, it's just an interesting thing that's something that Tom Dolan, he lived in the D.C. area. Everybody's like, man, you get a big swim in a small race, you don't get excited at all, but at a big meet, you're splashing, making all this scene. He goes, that's the only way I can get on the newspapers. I've got to do something. It's got to be an action shot. So, Caeleb Dressel is totally different. Look at this look on his face. I mean, he's like stone cold serious, man. And he is like, this guy just broke Michael Phelps' 100 butterfly world record. And that's how happy he looks. So, but what most people don't forget is that he still had 2 more finals. He had 3 finals that night. He had the 100 fly, he had the 50 free, and then he had a relay later. So he still has 2 more races. So all he's thinking about is, okay, this is good. I'm excited. I'm sure he's happy. But he's in business mode right now. He is not in celebration mode because he's got work to do. He's got more medals that he wants to win. He wants to get he wants to get as many gold medals as possible. I believe he got 6 gold medals in that meet. And so, he wants to show people that he can go out there and win gold in every single thing he swims. So that was the interesting difference in the 2 races and in his mentality of where he's at, the fact that he was still in business mode. I think it's so cool that he's just amped up like that. So that's your 100 butterfly world record swim. Gave you a little bit of different flavor to it. I talked about last week that I had a special guest and we weren't able to work it out, but there's another fly race I may try to, I shouldn't say anything, but I'm going to try to get it in. So hopefully over this weekend I might be able to put together another video. We'll get our guest speaker in. It's a world-class swimmer and so world-class butterflyer. So hopefully we can make this work. I'll see if I can make it work. I don't know. Next week it's 400 IM. One of my favorite races of all time. It's the men's 400 IM at the World Championship Trials. Multiple reasons I love this race. Number one, it's Eric Vent and Michael Phelps, the 2 greatest IMers going right there, going head to head. You got the world record holder sitting in the stands watching the race. I happened to be there because we had a swimmer married his sons and make the world championship team, and so it was exciting to be on the deck. But Michael Phelps does something that race was just amazing. Nobody had ever done it before, and there's the things that he did to prepare for that race are just really indicative of how he would transform himself and how he would make changes to get better. And so I think it's a great lesson for everybody. So again, I'm Bill Shawls. This is Bullets Academy, and this is your 100 butterfly history lesson. Close history, not deep history. And again, as always, I'm going to give a shout out to our coaches who are doing an amazing job. We're actually getting we have folks from USA Swimming that are reaching out to us and really want to know. We're getting a lot of people around the country asking about our social media and what we're doing for the online stuff that we're doing for you guys. So be sure to thank your coaches and give them a big shout out. A lot of cool stuff. I did the mass coach yesterday, so a lot of cool stuff. So anyway, I'm going to take off now, and thank you very much for watching. Like I said, tune in for that 400 IM race. It's my favorite event in swimming, and it's a cool race. All right? Have a great day, you guys. Hopefully we're getting back in the water soon.